to our community leaders. Community leaders. And I think the challenge for you all are going to be what issue to tackle first? Because I think with this topic, we could go on for another 2 hours or 3 hours addressing this topic. But we want to start with Leslie Johnson. Leslie Johnson, who is an educator at Winslow Schools. Leslie, you have the floor.
Yes. Yes, I have all these cards in front of me. I took so many notes. I'm going to start with I love Miss Guyton. I love how you said we have to be influencers, along with Mr. King about because I'm a firm believer, have always been a firm believer as parents, we have to lead by example. And I have to chuckle because my kids laugh. I've always had mature conversations with my children. And Mr. King, it might have been you who said we have to have like authentic conversations with our kids if they ask us if we've, ever drank or this, that, or the other. So my kids chuckle because I told them I might be one of the very few people. I've never tried marijuana. And growing up, it was around me. It was absolutely around me, but I never felt the pressure and I was never pressured to use it. And I just never felt I needed that type of escape. However, I did try cigarettes in the 6th grade. I told my kids, me and 2 friends found a ditch. It was just something we wanted to try. We bought our pack of cigarettes. Back then, there wasn't an age limit. We went and got the cigarettes, tried the cigarettes, and I determined after a very short time, that's not really for me. And I moved on about my business. But I've always said when I was gifted with my children that I want to be able to not only lead by example, but provide for them to give them the tools to assess, to make the right decisions, not necessarily be that dictator, do this or don't do that, because they see how I live my life. I've always been a very transparent parent. So pretty much who you see me as here is who I am. And I've always tried to be that way with them. But one of the questions that I do have, Mr. Fuentes, you said you go into the schools, you do programs with the kids and for parents, I believe you said. And my question is, how young? Like I'm an elementary school teacher, so right now I'm teaching 1st grade. My school is K through 3. Is that too young to start coming in now that marijuana is legalized? To start having the age appropriate conversations with them, because I know at least 2 kids I know for sure who have been exposed to a whole lot in their very young age. And I don't know that they would have these types of conversations with their parents given their situations. So I was just curious, how young are the children that you start having these conversations with?
Sure. So we at MAD we do believe that the conversation should start at an earlier age, specifically with the education programs that we provide, Power Parents and Power of Youth. They are at the moment geared starting at middle school, so 6th grade up. I know that our national office which is based in Texas. They are working on an educational version of the programming. So once we have more information, we of course will share that information out, and we can definitely share it with you too. But at the moment, our education is for 6th grade plus, and for parents of 6th grade plus.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Dr. Tench, I have a question for you as well. You mentioned in your presentation that we have, I don't know, for lack of a better term, natural marijuana that's pretty much plant based versus the marijuana that has been what is the word?
Synthetic.
Where's my?
I believe it was synthetic.
Synthetics, yes,
Right.
has been, and the synthetic version is more potent than the natural version. So with these stores that are selling the marijuana, is it natural and synthetic, or just natural or a combination of both?
So, of course, I'm not a expert on the street stuff, but as far as the legalized, I believe that should be natural. So the one in the legalized store should be natural. It should be the plant.
Okay.
But there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, we have a cannabis store, and this is another funny thing. When I saw the name of the store, Botanist, I was like, "Oh, we have a new plant store in the area. I'm gonna have to go in there and check them out." And then when I just recently found out, oh, that's a marijuana store. When the day after or the day of, my daughter and I were riding by it to go somewhere else. That the lines were out halfway down the parking lot, and that's when we were coming to and back from our appointment, and I was like, what? This is like nuts to me. But I was just curious if it was synthetic or natural. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have for right now.
All right, very good, very good. And next up, we're going to hear from Jill. Give me your pronunciation of your last name one more time, Jill.
Iovino.
Iovino, who is Director of Student Communities at the Perfecting Church. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just appreciate all of the speakers today and all the information that you shared. Of course, my perspective as the director at a church is to say, I know where you can find your joy. So if you're looking to get your children involved and to get yourself involved, any kind of faith community is a good place to start. Sometimes faith communities have a lot of programs that they can fill your children's time with, which I don't necessarily think is what we're looking for. But churches and synagogues and mosques can also help your children form faith so that they can believe in something bigger than themselves, and then they can be part of these villages that Desiree was talking about. So, a lot of adults have turned away from church because of things that they've heard on media and just the way that faith has been moving forward in this country right now. But I encourage you to seek out a community where you feel comfortable. It can be a good place to start to find people that you can connect with, and that where your children and you can both find your joy. And so the Perfecting Church, I'll do a little plug, is doing a mental health series right now at church. So you can find them online and listen to the pastors' wonderful mental health messages. And so just a little plug for a second, sorry. But I know that some people are, as Desiree was talking, if you're looking for ways to overcome depression and anxiety, sometimes listening to someone give you a different perspective is helpful. So, and so my question for today is for Dr. Tench or Desiree, if you know this too. I had heard that marijuana can cause a psychotic episode that is you cannot come back from. So I remember, like, growing up, someone I knew had gone to rehab just because of lots of drug use, and they were commenting that they were clinically insane because they had done 5 hits of LSD. But now they were better. So in the context of telling that story to someone, they said to me, well, marijuana is the only drug that can bring forth a psychotic episode that you cannot come back from. So I wanted to see if that was correct, if marijuana has that type of ability to push someone into, maybe if you were predisposed to schizophrenia, like push you into that full-on psychotic episode.
I personally have not done extensive research on it, so I haven't heard it, but I cannot say it's not true. But not something that I've heard. I would really have to do a little more research. I would think most, as far as dealing with the psychosis, it's more common to be more severe if they start younger or if they're habitual users. So I haven't heard it, but I'm not going to say it's not true. Okay.
If I could, Jill, if I could comment briefly. During the course of my career in law enforcement, I had encounters where certain individuals would dip marijuana cigarettes into various substances like embalming fluid and other things, and then smoke it. And so the combination of what they dipped it in oftentimes did have a real more significant impact on their behavior. Again, I'm not a doctor or scientist, but I can certainly attest to the things that I saw as a result of people behaving in that way when they engaged in using marijuana that was treated with other things.
Okay.
Yeah, I will concur on Dr. Trench and Mr. King. I have not heard marijuana itself. I have seen it when they did it with embalming fluid or what they call whack. So I've seen that where it's been so extreme that it was hard for them to come back. But when you say come back, anyone can come back from even schizophrenia. It's not always a death sentence. Most people, even if they biologically have an episode, there's ways that they could come back out of those psychosis. So usually, with a combination of medication, therapy, environment, detox, there's various things that happen that people can start slowly coming back to base. So I've never heard of just marijuana, but once again, I'm not an expert, but usually the ones that I've encountered, it was laced with something else.
So it also goes with like what Dr. Tench was saying, that you don't always know what you're smoking or you're consuming. I imagine this is not FDA regulated, and so you're getting like a precisely measured out dose like you would with prescription medications and so forth. So there is that awareness that everyone needs to have, that you don't always know what you are putting into your body when you're using these kinds of products.
You're absolutely correct, Jill.
Okay, that's all that I have.
Right. I didn't know if you had another question coming. And now we're going to talk.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
You're good. Awesome. So now we're going to ask Sharon if she has a question she'd like to pose to one or more of the panelists.
Excuse me. So I've been putting little notes on my phone here while we were doing this. And I have a list of questions and a list of comments and just observations. And I'll try and be as brief as I can and try and kind of keep it in order here. So first, I will go to Dr. Tench, and I'm just going to ask this question because you had made the comment about people withdrawing from marijuana use. And I have been seeing a therapist for about the past 2 years. My therapist is a recovering addict, and it's widely known within that community that they use marijuana to get people off harder drugs because marijuana does not have the same dependency and withdrawal. So when you said that, it sort of raised questions with me. Is there withdrawal from marijuana or is there not? I mean, that seems to be a direct contradiction to the research that's done with drug addicts.
Not specifically, maybe I used the wrong word as far as withdrawal. It's more they will have, for those who have been using it for a year or more, defining them as having a cannabis use disorder, you will see similar symptoms. So I don't think it's a specific withdrawal where they're going to be sick. But I think it's more those chronic users that have been using it for a year or more and then they want to stop. But
so it's more of breaking a habit as opposed to going through a withdrawal.
Yeah, they're going to get some symptoms, but it's not something that they need to be hospitalized for.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because that like I said, that was a complete contradiction to what I had conversations with my therapist about.
Can I just add response as well?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. One, I agree that withdrawal, and I think what we have to talk about is the difference between withdrawal mentally, emotionally, and a withdrawal physically. So often in addiction, they look more a lot at more of the physical components, right? Because heroin and cocaine has such a strong physical withdrawal. So I would just challenge sometimes in our thoughts that, and I agree with Dr. Trentz and yourself, that we may not need to use the word withdrawal in the same definitional component. I would actually say, as a therapist, and maybe I'm wrong, because I don't have a lot of research behind it. I can't say I studied it, but I would say there's a psychological withdrawal that is so strong with marijuana that is the part that we see with the behaviors of depression, anxieties, and things like that can have a different type of effect.
Thank you. And I do agree with that. So there was a couple things, and to the point of keeping our kids, speaking with our kids and keeping them educated about this and preventing those types of things. There were a couple things. Now, as a parent of 2 kids, I had both of my kids have learning disabilities. One is nonverbal NVLD, nonverbal learning disability, and the other is dyslexic. So when Mr. King, you had mentioned requiring all of your athletes to be straight A students, I think that might be something that you want to consider and have the expectation rather than everybody being a straight A student, because that puts a lot of undue stress on kids that can't. Perhaps striving to have kids be the best they can be. And I think that that's something that we really need to address in coaching, because my daughter's soccer coach destroyed her. And in large part is why I'm part of this group, because of the way they treated her. And post-injury, she was an ACL, and that psychologically destroyed her. And then the way the coach handled her after that really kind of put her into a downward spiral. So I think that that's an important thing. But what I will say is, I don't remember who mentioned keeping kids busy. My daughter was friends with 80 athletes, tight group. They were the ones that were the early users of marijuana in middle school. They were all busy. They were all very active. They were all high achievers, and they were all dabbling. So I think that with a lot of what we're seeing now with these athletes committing suicide, I think that the mental health aspect needs to really be addressed and maybe focus less on mental toughness and more on mental health. And I think that that's really an important piece. And then the last piece, I have a whole list of things, but I'll just kind of summarize it. We had in our schools, we had the local police departments come in annually. It was the same night as back to school night or as conferences, and they would have community education about drug use. We are in a school district that had, I think, 3,000 students in the high school. I was one of 25 parents that attended this annually. The parents aren't worried about it, or they are worried about it, but they don't want to, go. They don't want to be that parent that's there. That's, oh, not my Johnny. No, not going to be my Johnny. And it is my Johnny. And I think that we need to really look at being a community. I think that, Jill, you had mentioned, being a community and being involved. And what happens and what I have seen is we all know whose kid's doing what, but you're not going to call Johnny's mom and say, you know what, little Sally told me that Johnny's been smoking pot or, is dabbling in this, because we want to stay within our circus and our monkeys. And once we cross that line, it becomes, we have now violated the trust of our child who gave us information in confidence. So we have to figure out how to be a community and how to find that line of how to protect all of our kids without violating the trust of our own kid. And I think that that's a big concern, and that's something that I don't know the answer to. So that's sort of my thoughts. I have a bunch of other stuff that just were things that kind of came up, but those are things that I know were concerns when I was raising my kids, and I have some regrets in that regard.
Right. Well, I certainly.
If I could, Sharon, fantastic what you just presented. Sharon, fantastic with what you just presented. All fantastic points, all of which I absolutely took into consideration. So, for example, and I didn't explain it fully with respect to my involvement with my coaching. At that particular time, I was coaching 3 teams. And so the team in which the all A students were on were all type A personalities, kids who were driven in a way that just made them overachiever type personalities. And then I had other teams where the demands for academic excellence was not as high. And so I certainly recognize the distinction between those kids who were those super achievers and those who were achievers on levels a little bit less than that. With respect to mental toughness, when I talk about that, it specifically had to do with just the competitive activity on the field. And so, one of the things that I did back then was I had a yoga instructor who, when we were off the field, we would engage in the use of her methods in order to allow for there to be a release off the field, a relaxation time period to kind of basically decompress from that competitive environment. And to a greater extent, so when my daughter advanced to the collegiate level, one of the great things about the school that she went to, which was NC State, they had a team psychologist, and she would take advantage of her services in order to allow for her, again, to decompress and to kind of put things in perspective, because, obviously on that level with the competition and the academic demands and the traveling around the country, it kind of put a lot of stressors on her. And she found that to be just an exceptional tool to kind of help her graduate in 7 semesters with a 4.0. So I certainly appreciate what you said, and I certainly have been mindful of the distinctions and differences between certain types of student athletes from others.
Awesome.
And I want to jump.
And thank you for that. And I'm sorry. I just I appreciate that, and I just think it's important to look at each athlete and what their drivers are, as opposed to a universal coaching, and every coach has their way, and that's okay. I just think that there needs to be more positive coaching as opposed to negative. You get more out of people by building them to the positive, by having goals for them, and then when they achieve them, reward them for those.
And I want to jump into there and say I really appreciate your comments, because I think it balances us in our what we were saying earlier. So I want to say I appreciate that. When I was talking mental toughness or connecting to King, it depends on our population, right? So I did 15 years in home with a lot of families that was 80% single parent homes where kids may not even been supervised. And so I was thinking more, there was various, like I said, when I was thinking of this discussion, even when he was speaking, there's this upper class, middle class, there's ways of when you got family, mom and dad home and not, and there's the stressors, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. You can be wealthy and putting your kids through all this stuff and it's stressing them out. And then you can have kids who are not having any structure or motivation. And so I appreciate your comment. I think it does balance us. And I just want to say, you're right. I didn't mean it in the sense of mental toughness. What I was trying to say is when in cognitive behavior therapy, we call it cognitive distortions, and helping kids to work through the conversations that they're having in their head. What I'm finding is so many kids don't even want to face the conversation that they're having in their head. They want to, Ms. Des, I'm just going to get high. You know, and it's like, dude, you need to work through why you're feeling anxiety when you walk in class, why you feel like you're a failure and you can't accomplish this basketball team. Those are the things that I was thinking of when I was saying mental toughness, in the sense of fighting through instead of escaping and saying, I need to face that and have a self-conversation. So I appreciate what you said, because I do think you nailed it on that. We can have them too busy. That's not a necessary solution. It's a healthy balance in helping them. So I appreciate really what you said.
Well, and the one thing, and I see Leslie just raised her hand there. The one thing that I will say is, when my daughter was 16, we were having some issues, and I felt that she needed to see somebody. And what we need to fix is our mental health system, because as a parent, I am legally responsible for you until you're 18. In Pennsylvania, I don't know if it's the same in New Jersey. In Pennsylvania, at age 14, you are no longer able to legally require your child to see a therapist. So at 16, I took her to see somebody. The first words out of the therapist's mouth were, "Are you here of your own free will?" My daughter's answer was no. And the therapist was like, "Nothing I can do. We can't force her to be here." So, and I've been in crisis myself personally, and you're usually the last to know it. So that's where I think the system really needs to be fixed, is allowing us, without having to have somebody be a danger to themselves or others, to be able to help them get help when they don't want to get help.
Very good. And I think the longer we talk, the more we realize that there's so many layers to this discussion. And when I initially thought to bring us together, I really didn't have we're going to do this and then what? So it might be nice for us to brainstorm as a team, what some good next steps might be for us going forward, how we can get more of this information out into the hands of other influencers, so that we can be that community that Jill talks about. So I know I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I know I was going to try to be done by 11:30. It's already 11:46, so I'm going to let Leslie ask her last question, and then we will wrap up. And then, as I told Jill, I'm going to make this video available for everyone. I think I may have an editor look it over and make some edits, because I know we had some technical issues at the beginning with the video. But once the video is ready to go, I will email it out to everyone so that we can share this knowledge. It was awesome. This forum exceeded my expectations. So I sincerely thank everybody for participating. And one thing I will say, and I guess it speaks to Sharon's point, I don't think there's any one size fits all solution for every child, right? I mean, every child is unique. As Desiree mentioned, they're all experiencing life, and they're seeing life differently. I mean, they're going through the same situations, but their experience is unique to them. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as parents and influencers to kind of walk alongside of them and help them navigate some of these challenges. And I think that this forum went a long way in empowering parents and other educators like Leslie to help these kids navigate this. And one thing Desiree said that I was really just stuck home with me, instead of kids utilizing and having the proper tools to deal with life and to cope with life, they're using marijuana to escape from life. And so that's heartbreaking to me as a parent. And so, my husband and I, we're going to have some conversations today about, how we as parents, and like you said, you never know what kids are dealing with, right? Especially if they're off and we launch them out into the world. We don't know what challenges they're, unless they're open and honest and share that information with us. And so it's been a challenge listening to some of your presentations, but I'm challenged to now have those conversations, and as Leslie said, I have very close relationships with my kids, but I guess topics like this are sometimes uncomfortable to have. And so I just want to thank everyone for coming on board, just Rich King, everyone sharing your experiences about how you've kind of helped your kids kind of stay on that trajectory, right, for success, and kind of creating a hedge around them, so to speak, to help them, make the best decisions for them. So Leslie, I will toss things over to you to ask your question.
I have to jump in on what real quick for Leslie.
Yes.
Can I say one quick thing, Faith?
Yes.
I'm also a parent of boys. They're older, and becoming a therapist taught me. First of all, I was doing parenting wrong, like in the sense of not listening.
Right.
So I would say one of the biggest things I had to learn was not as a parent to become more listening to my own children and creating a safe space for them to talk. Really meant for the pain that I was feeling being pulled into their conversations. That meant me really not reacting to a lot of things I wanted to say. Boy, what are you doing? Like, because if I don't create a safe space for them to talk, they won't talk. And I had to learn to take a lot of things that I didn't want to hear and not react. And we tend to want to react. We want to say, what do you mean? Why'd you? Instead, just asking the question and sitting with their answer was so hard, and still is. I want to fix it, right? Your mom, I want to fix you. And I tell people after the age of 14, you really got to change. It should not be a whole lot of fixing because you've already poured into them a lot of the choices. It's really allowing that safe space. I wanted to just make that one comment is that's a pool that I have on every conversation is this pool of I want to fix you. I want to change you. Instead, favorite line to them is, are you ready for me to respond?
Okay.
And they'll say, they may not, they'll come back a couple of days later and say, Mom, I really thought about it. I'm ready for you to hear what you want to say. Okay. I had to let them walk away and give them permission to say, I want them to come to me and say, I'm ready to hear. But I would ask the question, are you ready for me to respond?
Great. Awesome.
And then they'll let me know. No, I just want you to know. So that's just one major tip I want to give you that I really had to learn. So shut up. I promise. Go ahead, Leslie.
I just want to say my kids know, while they know emphatically, I don't support any substance that alters their sense of decision making or safety, but they know above else because I've told them.
Right.
I don't care what you do. You know that I love you and you'll always have my support. And if you ever find yourself in a situation, whether you're with a group of friends and you don't feel, they've been drinking, you don't feel getting comfortable getting in the car, or you're the one who was drinking, or whatever that situation is, I don't care, whoever the foot is on.
Right.
You can call me. I don't care what time of day it is. I don't care where you are. You pick up that phone and call me. And the rule is we're not going to discuss it that night. We're going to go home, have a good sleep. You don't have to worry about me badgering you that night. But after we get a good night's sleep, we'll have that discussion later. But I never want them to feel that there could be in any situation. I said, I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I've heard about it all. So there is nothing you can do that could ever shock me, because I want my kids to know if there's nobody else, they can pick up that phone and my mama will be there for them.
I love it.
I just wanted to say that.
I love it. And we will not be apologetic for being loving and caring and unconditional mothers. Amen. Amen. So I was going to wrap up, but I have my husband who has a quick question. So go ahead, Bentley.
Yeah, Sharon talked about how our laws don't always support us in supporting our kids in the best possible manner. And, I see now, these days with recreational marijuana use being made legal in a lot of states, it makes it very challenging as a parent. I know when I was growing up, most of the prominent adults in society and in my life were encouraging me to say no to drugs, and they were illegal. And now we have marijuana being seen as a big industry, adults investing in marijuana companies and politicians advocating for legalization because they want the tax dollars. And it does really make it more challenging. So I don't know what the answer is in that respect. But we do have a question that came in from our friend, Christina Everard. And I have the same question. Our kids often talk about people who smoke or drink when they go out to parties or even stay at home. And I'm wondering if the legalization of marijuana is making alcohol use and abuse less common, or if there's a correlation and people are smoking and drinking more because of the legalization. And so I'm wondering if the marijuana is a substitute or if it's something that encourages people to drink even more, and if the marijuana use is likely to lead to kids trying other substances that might be even more harmful to them.
Can I offer and just a comment to that?
Please.
So from what I have heard, statistically, in colleges, alcohol use has decreased at an equal rate to marijuana use increasing. So I think that a lot of the people of that age group are migrating, if you will. I mean, they're still drinking on college campuses. There's going to always be drinking on college campuses, but marijuana use does seem to be increasing. And I can tell you, as a 54-year-old woman, I believe 95% of my friends and peer group have medical marijuana cards. Everybody and anybody. I mean, you want a marijuana card? I just got a Groupon that you have to fill out a thing and you can get a medical marijuana card. So everybody is doing it. And it's a lot of the people that I was friends with in high school. I never used drugs, but most of my friends did. And they've now raised their families and they're going back. And now it's legal. So why not? And you don't get a hangover, from what I understand. So, why not eat a cookie instead of taking a drink? So I do think that it is becoming the new thing, which is sad.
I agree.
Dr. Tench or Desiree, did you have a response to Christina's question regarding behavior changing or not changing as a result of the marijuana legalization?
I don't have specific statistics on whether it's substituting the alcohol, but there was one in the article I was reading that did talk about the fact that if they are using alcohol, their increased chance of using the marijuana as well. So that's the only statistic that I know. But I think with the more convenience of the marijuana, it probably is going to be people are probably going to use that more often because it's so much easier to, I can just get that, but definitely it's not saying that the alcohol is going away. Surely not. Yeah.
Yes.
And the one other thing that was bad about it is the kids think that it's okay to drive with marijuana, So now you got another issue coming, Yeah. It's not as bad, which is surely not the case. We're seeing that in the states that became legalized before us, that they're getting much higher MBAs because it's people driving under the influence of marijuana.
Yes. And so again, it's just incumbent upon all of us here to get this information out and to be that positive influence to the young people in our orbit, because we all have young people, whether they're related to us or not, that we can impart some wisdom and knowledge into their lives just to make sure they stay on the right trajectory. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much again to everyone who's on this call. And I so appreciate your participation. I do not take it for granted. You carved out, almost 2 hours of your time, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I think it was certainly for a noble and honorable purpose. And so again, I will make sure that you all get a recording of this so that you in your own way can maybe share it with your children, or it could serve as kind of like a bridge to open up some dialogue with your young people in your family. So thank you so much, and you all have a wonderful day.